Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Open Council of the NMC, and a particularly warm welcome to all our observers. We have, I see from my screen, 123 people online, and we may have some more, and it's good to have so many observers for this important open session of the Council. I have some apologies to give. Matthew McClelland isn't able to be with us today, I'm afraid, but Sarah Kovacs-Clark will be attending on behalf of Strategy and Insight. Sarah, welcome to you. And Anne Trotter, Assistant Director for Education and Standards, is attending on behalf of Sam Foster, who has given her apologies for the morning session, but will be joining us in the afternoon. And I'm also delighted that Surinder Birdy, the member of the Appointments Board and indeed chair designate of the Appointments Board, is observing the meeting as well. Welcome to you, Surinder. Now, can I just remind everybody to update their timeout on board intelligence, to mute their microphones when not speaking. We're going to leave the session running during the breaks, but please mute your phone and switch off your webcam. Can I ask council and executive colleagues, please, to use the raise a hand function to indicate if they wish to ask questions or comment on the substantive discussions in the council meeting proper. This next bit of housekeeping is for our observers. We have two periods of time allotted on today's agenda for questions and answers, questions to the council, because the agenda is kind of so important and we know there will be a lot of questions that are being asked. The first will be on the Independent People and Culture Review, item 7 on the agenda, where we will be taking questions at 11:50. And then again at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we will have questions to council on the other topics on the agenda, which we will respond to then. We will be taking questions via the Q&A function on Teams, but we have a large number of questions and comments already submitted in advance. We will be answering all those questions when we come to the Q&A session at 11:50, because they relate almost exclusively, I think, to the People and Culture, Independent People and Culture Review. In the interest of transparency, let me say up front, we have edited 2 of those questions because they contain personal data about individuals, but we will be answering all the points and questions of substance that have been tabled to us in full. The questions will be visible to all participants. If your name is not showing because you're joining by mobile phone or some other reason, please add your name and role or description to the beginning of your question. There will be more questions, I'm sure, being tabled in the course of the meeting, and we will try to answer as many as we possibly can, so ensure we get through all the questions and concerns which we know people want to raise. I emphasize, as I do at every Open Council meeting, that we cannot comment or give answers about individual cases or situations. For this meeting, exceptionally, the NMC standing orders relating to recording council meetings are suspended to allow this meeting to be recorded. Now, I have apologies for absence, as I've said already, from Sam for this morning's session, and from Matthew McClelland, and also from Navjot Kaur-Virk, our associate member of council. I don't have any other apologies for absence, unless the secretary to the council wants to advise me. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that the questions we've received in advance can be seen in the chat function. The chat is turned off for this meeting, but we've preloaded those questions in the chat, and the QA function has now been turned on. So observers will be able to ask their questions as the meeting goes along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, for clarifying that point, which I probably should have clarified to start with. Many thanks. Item 3 on the agenda are declarations of interest, and I ask colleagues and staff to declare any interests which may be or may be seen to be likely to influence their contributions to discussions or decisions. All registrant council members and associates should declare an interest in the item on the update on the progressing of our fitness to practice casework, but those interests are not considered material, such as to require the individuals concerned to withdraw from those discussions or decisions, as they are no more affected by these changes than other registrants or staff. Item 4 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been tabled. These are for council's approval, but can I ask whether any member of council has any questions that they would like to raise? Sue.
Yes, thank you, David. I'd like to propose a change to the minute under Audit Committee Annual Report, NMC 2451E. It says that the colleagues were raising issues and concerns at meetings. It is what was said, because I said it, was that they were recording issues and concerns via the adverse incident system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Claire?
Thank you. On page 4, under little n, we record that for the practice learning review, the importance of having expertise from advisors reflecting the diversity of our register. I wonder if we should capture that intention in our action.
So that's an issue to be added to the matters arising for actions to be taken. Thank you, Claire. And Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. My corrections to the minutes have been sent in writing to Secretary, but just for clarity, one of the actions seems to be missing: an action to provide themes in education quality assurance currently affecting academic institutions re-education QA. And that was an action for today, and it was for the Executive Director for Professional Practice. I also have 2 corrections under the minutes for the Audit Committee Annual Report. Correction for item 2A, the committee had accepted the Head of Internal Audit's annual opinion and assessment of governance, internal control and risk management environment. That's the reality. And correction 2B, the letters of representation did include clauses specific to NMC. So H.W. Fisher letter of representation, paragraph 9, was specific around pensions, which is specific to the NMC. So just want to have those 3 corrections recorded. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Deborah. I'm going to pass all those corrections to the minutes over to the Secretary, and I don't think there are any issues or complications arising from that. So, Matt, if the corrected minutes could be in due course circulated to me for signature, I will sign them. Otherwise, everybody is content. Deborah, your hand is still up, but I assume that everybody is content. Thank you so much to colleagues for those comments. I'll move on to item 5, which is the summary of actions, page 24 of Board Intelligence. Are there any comments which anybody would like to make on these? Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Just drawing attention to the item that's NMC 24/50, 3rd of July, the discussion with inclusive boards and the recruitment of the panel members. Just noting that we've received 1,700 applications for the 140 places. So just a comment in that sense, and a recognition that we've clearly attracted more than I think we were expecting. And a question, which is, do we know at this stage what the diversity makeup of the applicants are, and will we be assured that inclusive boards are enabling us to track the diversity through the whole of the recruitment process? Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Matt?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Lindsay. Yes, I can update Council that 35% of applications for the panel member roles were from applicants from ethnic minority backgrounds, and 14% of applicants declared that they had a disability. As a sort of a 2 stats about diversity that I have to hand. And yes, part of our requirement in the specification is that we track diversity through each stage, and we'll be reporting to the Appointments Board on that, and that detail will be provided to council when we come back to ask for council's approval for the appointments early next year.
Thank you very much, Matt. Are there any other questions on the matters arising or summary of actions? No, I don't see any hands raised, in which case, thank you very much, Matt. Oh, yes, Deborah. I'm sorry, Deborah.
Just really quickly, just on the back of that, Matt, can we confirm that we've also asked inclusive boards to track socioeconomic background as part of the diversity stat?
Thank you, Deborah. Matt, do we have an answer to that?
Deborah, I will have to come back to you on that. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will let you know.
Thanks. Lindsay.
Apologies, David. I meant to give the second point as well, which was on the next item down, which is in relation to the arrangement for council to meet the volunteer ambassadors in our Empowered to Speak Up service. I just wanted to check. I know we're going to do it once they've received their training, and I think that's absolutely appropriate. But I just wanted to double check that the 27th of November was the earliest opportunity for that, because I would certainly want to see us being able to meet with them, engage with them as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Matt, it would be good if we could bring it forward, but I don't know what the constraints are there. Yep.
Yes, I can certainly liaise with Gavin Kennedy, who's the Deputy Director of People, on whether we can bring that forward. It will just depend on the recruitment and training, but I will pick that up.
Thank you very much. Any other questions anybody wants to ask about or comments on the matters arising and summary of actions? In which case, thank you very much, Matt. We note those and we move to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Independent People and Culture Review. This is, of course, the first meeting of council since the publication of Nazia Afzal's and Rise Associates' report on the people and culture of the NMC, which has attracted a fair degree of media comment and stakeholder comment. And I'm going to ask Helen, our acting chief executive and registrar, to introduce the paper which council is invited to discuss. Helen.
Thank you, David. And since we have quite a few people joining us today, so maybe for the first time, can I just say that, yes, I am the Acting Chief Exec and Registrar. My substantive role is, excuse me, the Executive Director for Resources and Technology Services. And I've also been the Executive Lead who's been overseeing the Independent People and Culture Review and the Ijoma Omambala investigation too. The final thing I just need to say before I start is that I am full of cold, so please bear with me if I just need to take on some water to clear my throat at times. So the Independent People and Culture Report was published on the 9th of July. Makes difficult reading for everyone at the NMC. It also makes difficult reading for those outside of the NMC. Let me start by saying that we have accepted the 36 recommendations in full and hope actually to go further than those 36. The executive team have apologised unreservedly to colleagues, those on our register and the public who deserve better. The executive team are also very aware that those are just words and it will be the actions that demonstrate the change that is needed. Internally, colleagues have expressed a range of reactions: sadness, anger, shame, frustration. We continue to enable colleagues to read and absorb the detailed report and provide support to colleagues as needed. There have been similar reactions externally, with many external stakeholders expressing their disappointment and calling for action. We've already started engaging both internally and externally to help formulate the necessary plans that will bring about the much needed change. There is, however, work underway, work that looks to strengthen our approach to safeguarding, led by Sam Foster and others. Work to expedite action to reduce the timeliness of FTP referrals, and work to ensure that we deal with poor, unacceptable behaviour. In the short term, we're taking immediate action. We've already appointed an external empowered to speak up guardian. This individual is now in place, and I know that people have already approached this individual. We've established externally facilitated listening circles, which are safe spaces for our colleagues. and we're investing in a partner to help improve psychological safety within the organisation. That's starting within the Professional Regulation Directorate, but we will be rolling it out further. We've started the process of appointing an equality, diversity and inclusion advisor to our exec board to help support decision making. But we know that is not a substitute for ensuring that all members of exec board have a good depth of understanding on EDI matters. There are some other immediate commitments that we're making. We're looking to double the amount we spend on colleague learning and development. We need to increase the investment that we make in our people, but we need to plan it. We need to make sure that the investment that we make will deliver the outcomes that we need. We're also developing a competency and behaviour framework, which will launch in September this year. We have two opportunities to increase the diversity of our executive board, with the interim and permanent recruitment of the chief executive and of one of our executive directors who leaves us later this year. We will appoint an EDI partner to review our EDI learning and improve mandatory training, identify any gaps in its policies, and look at our approach to tackling bullying, harassment and discrimination. In the medium term, we are reviewing our existing plans in light of the contents of the independent report's recommendations. Many will be aware of the £30 million 18-month improvement plan for fitness to practice. This is already in the process of being reviewed to ensure it addresses the issues raised in the report. In the longer term, we will focus on the wider culture change. Council members be very aware that that doesn't happen overnight. Thought needs to be given and specialisms need to be brought in to make sure that we have a sustainable medium-term plan to start that culture change. We have committed to provide a detailed plan by early September. That plan will provide not only the detail that we've already given, but more detail that covers off all 36 recommendations included in the report. Finally, we acknowledge that the contents of the report will have damaged trust and confidence in the NMC and its role as a regulator. It will only be by delivering on the recommendations and making significant changes in culture and the other areas highlighted in the report that we will rebuild that trust. David, that's all I'm going to say at the moment, so we have plenty of time for questions from council members and then the wider audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. I want to say, if I may, a few words before I ask council colleagues to comment and ask questions. The first thing I want to say is to associate myself with the apologies that you have given, Helen, on behalf of the executive and the leadership of the organisation, and I echo those on behalf of council, and more than just on behalf of council. These are personal apologies from me. An apology to our staff. Nazir Afzal's report indicates graphically conditions which ought not to exist within a properly functioning organisation. And I want to say how sorry I am to members of staff reading their lived experience of working in the NMC, and to our registrants, a large number of whom are online in this meeting and who've made their views known over the past 2 weeks, particularly those caught up in the fitness to practice processes, which, as the report indicates, as council knows, because we've discussed this many times, are still taking too long to resolve. I want to repeat those apologies because I think it is important that they are firmly on every record that we have about our public and private discussion of this deeply troubling report. I want to say something also that is to my council colleagues as a preface really to the discussion we're about to have. We've read the paper and Helen, thank you very much for your introduction to it, because there's an enormous amount of activity there that we will wish to scrutinise, ask questions about and so forth. But I think council also need to ask ourselves questions about how we got to this position. And these are questions about council's discussions over the past few years on these and other related topics covered in the People and Culture Review, What questions did we not ask that we should have done? What assurances did we not seek? Or if we received assurances, did we not question sufficiently robustly? I think if we are to move forward at the pace and with the determination that we want to demonstrate to address all these issues, we do have to ask ourselves those questions, because building a better and stronger NMC in the future depends upon our understanding what we have got wrong in the past. So I make those general points, which I hope will be with the grain of the way in which I think council colleagues are already reflecting on this issue and the sort of questions I know that they're going to want to ask. I want to say one more thing, or set of things, and that is just to report to council and the executive on the discussions that we have been having with stakeholders, specifically the Department of Health and Social Care, who of course have a close interest in what we are doing. I met with the new Minister of State for Health, Karen Smith, last week, and in order to provide ministers, the devolved governments, because we are a four nations regulator, our stakeholders and the public, with the assurance that we are urgently addressing the concerns raised in the Independent People and Culture Review, we've agreed that the NMC should undertake the following. Firstly, we need to appoint an interim chief executive and registrar as soon as we can. We are going to be launching the campaign for an interim CER next week. We're working with the DHSC and with inclusive boards, whom we've already mentioned this morning, to identify candidates for this position. And Matt briefed us earlier on the work we've done with inclusive boards on panel member recruitment, where we saw a markedly more diverse constituency of applicants for panel member positions. So we're aiming to make an appointment by the beginning of October, and in parallel we will be running a campaign which will start a little later in early September for the permanent chief executive and registrar position, with a view to announcing a permanent successor to Andrea Sutcliffe before Christmas. Secondly, we will be co-opting one or more senior independent advisors to the council. We're doing this because we want to increase the challenge and support that the council receives to ensure that the necessary cultural changes are delivered and to prevent any recurrence of what Nazir Afzal and his colleagues found and reported in their review. We will be urgently identifying a number of candidates with the required independence, expertise, and experience to fulfill these roles. And I hope to be in a position to report more shortly. Thirdly, we recognise the need to make urgent improvements to our fitness to practice processes and decision making. We know we need to do this so that we can tackle the caseload, we can ensure that investigations and decisions are processed and taken faster, and that we can deliver effective public protection. We will therefore be identifying additional external expertise to provide insight, support, advice on the improvements that we know we need to make. And finally, there will be enhanced professional standards authority oversight of the NMC's progress through the establishment of an independent advisory group. The PSA will be establishing this oversight and support group, which will receive regular updates on the NMC's progress. It will scrutinise the impact of measures introduced by the NMC to improve its culture and performance, and it will provide insight and advice on further actions which we may need to take. It is envisaged that this group will include chief nursing officers from the 4 UK nations, representatives from the trades unions, policy officials from the Department of Health and Social Care and devolved governments, and other relevant experts who will be identified by the PSA. So that is the action plan that we've agreed with the department, with ministers, and I wanted to report that to council this morning, as I say, as a prelude and a context for the discussions which we're now going to have about the review. So thank you for letting me do that, and I'd like to ask colleagues to raise their hands using the raised hand function and ask any questions of Helen and the executive or of me, or make any comments on this important paper. Lynn.
Thank you very much, David and Helen. I wanted to raise a sort of potential agenda item for our next open board. It's regarding safeguarding. It's in section 11 of the paper. I was really pleased to hear from Sam Foster at our last update that we've had 2 of the safeguarding board meetings internally, and that we've also increased the resources into safeguarding. This is a really important area. It was picked up in the independent culture report, and I think it's not currently down as a particular agenda item to look in detail, but it's indicated that in September there will be a full delivery plan, and I think it would be very helpful to have that to open council. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lynn. Let's carry on taking questions, and then Helen and others will be able to respond. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to add my personal apology to all those groups affected that you and the Acting Chief Executive have set out. These are completely unacceptable issues the organisation recognises and will take the action, including action for council. My point is that I would like to thank all NMC staff who've spoken out as part of the research into this independent culture review, which we commissioned, through other channels. I recognise a depth of distress and very powerful reactions behind the report's research. I know it takes such courage to speak up, and I know that it can feel like it shouldn't be you that does it, and it shouldn't be now. But you had a chance to share information and to propel fundamental change, and you took it. So I offer, excuse me, I'm slightly emotional, my gratitude for the support and my support. I'm very grateful that you want to be part of the change here, to be part of the solution. And you are vital to the NMC's work in protecting the public and moving society forward. The Empowered Speak Up service is now live, and I'd like to hear what the scale of usage has been in these early days, please, Executive.
Thank you very much, Sue. Eileen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to you and to Helen for your initial comments. Sue, thank you for your comments. I absolutely concur with your words, and your emotion is well placed and I think reflected across all council. My comment, colleagues, is on page 5 of the report, paragraph 16.4. And it's around the comment around the investment for colleagues' learning and development across the organisation. And I know that Ruth and Lisanne have briefed us in some of the detail of this previously, but it's to support improvement in the leadership, line management, safeguarding, casework, and addressing poor behaviours at all levels in the organisation. The resources are approved by council and come from registrants' fees. So my comment is that measures, when we come back to this in September, the measures around these interventions will be scrutinised and should not just be purely process focused, but we need these measures to be outcome focused as part of our implementation of the recommendations within the independent culture report that we commissioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Anna, and then I think it's Mags. Anna and then Mags.
Well, I too, as a member of the council, would like to associate myself with what David, Helen and Sue have all said. Council clearly has a key set of issues looking backwards and a key role to play going forwards. Helen, you helpfully said that your plan was for a detailed look at the recommendations by early September. And I wanted to say how important I thought it would be that council was thoroughly involved in that. Both the principles and the recommendations relating to the 36 recommendations. But I also wanted to make one other point, which is, having read Nazir's report very carefully, and like others, feeling that where we are is unacceptable, I hope that both council and the executive team jointly can ask ourselves about the issues that underlie the recommendations. My concern is that we could implement the 36 recommendations and not necessarily get at some of the underlying cultural issues. And I think a joint discussion between the council and the executive team with clear input from staff and the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian gives us the best chance of understanding the underlying cultural issues and acting on them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. I'm going to go to Mags, and then I'm going to come back to Helen and the executive, and I know Anne has her hand up as well, to respond to the first round of questions, and then we've got quite a lot more to get through as well. Mags.
Thank you, Chair, and in keeping what's been said, I too want to offer my sincere apologies, and I think as a council member and as I think all of us, we need to look back as well as look forward. And I think we've said this in terms of, you know, what might we have done differently? What could we? Because we need to do this in order to make sure moving forward we get it right. All of us are doing it independently, I know. And so it's really important that we look at this. Moving forward, I think the rigour of our scrutiny around the developments, the actions, the outcomes and the impact are going to be really important. So it won't be just enough, I think, to take quarterly or whatever reports. I think, and again, we have an overseeing group and we will have external support in this. But for us as council, we really need our finger on the pulse in this in a way that is really embedding the work, but also looking at what the accountable measures are. My mother had a saying, the row is never what the row is about. And I think it sort of follows on from what Anna is saying here, that this report tells us something, but it's the sum of the parts we need to look at. And therefore, moving forward, working cohesively with all members of staff and all our stakeholders, and obviously clearly council is going to be crucial. My final point is, draft principles were established around the time of the report. These draft principles are under point 22 in the report. I think we need to look at them again. I think listening to what the public is telling us and our staff are telling us, we need to go back again with fresh eyes and see how we can look at these that really reflect moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mags. Helen, can I come back to you and colleagues in the executive? And as I say, I know Anne has her hand up and may want to contribute to, just to respond to that first round of questions.
Yeah, of course. Excuse me. Thank you, David. And I will invite colleagues in. Council members, thank you for your questions. First of all, Lynn, on the safeguarding and having sight of the full delivery plan and discussions with council on that. Bringing that to open council. The plan at the moment is that the open council meeting on the 24th of September will be used to present in detail, or a degree of detail, the plans that will support the recommendations. So hopefully that will cover that off. Personally, from an executive perspective, I think this links very much to a couple of other points that are made about ensuring that council and executive continue to work together in an increased effective manner, that we should be meeting before we get to September to talk through some of the issues that we're just discussing here. The issues that I know you've discussed either as individuals or as council, and that the executive team have also discussed as individuals and as council. So I think that knowledge coming together before the meetings that will take place in September will be beneficial to all, and is absolutely the right thing to do. Sue and Eileen's points, I'm going to go to Lisanne on those in a minute. And again, the points from Anna and Mags about it isn't, the recommendations, as I said, we will look to go beyond the recommendations, and it's not just a list of action points there that we're going to pick up, run with and say, well, we've now done that. The approach we're taking here is completely different as an executive team. And we would really need to listen now that the report has been published. If you remember, some of us for fact checking had the report previously, but there is such value in the feedback, in the comments, in the reactions, both internally and externally, that again, we, both council and exec and the organisation, need to reflect on and build into, really understanding, what outcomes, what are we trying to achieve, whether it's the culture, whether it's the impact of our fitness to practice process on all those that it touches. So Anna, completely agree with you on that. And Mags, looking forward, looking backwards, I think we've all done an awful lot of reflecting with regards to our roles as individuals, to our role as whether it's the executive board or the council or whatever. And again, to bring that together to learn from that going forward would be extremely valuable. We very much acknowledge that. Lisanne, can I come to you, please, for two of the three of the other questions that were asked from Sue and from Eileen?
Thanks, Helen. And before I respond to Sue and Eileen's questions, I'd just like to say sorry on behalf of myself and Ruth for the experiences that are described in the report. They fall well short of what we aim for in our role, and it's something we seek to put right as we move forward. Sue, on the issue of the Empowered to Speak Up ambassador, you asked how many people were in touch with the ambassador, and so far we've heard back that we've had 5 current staff members in touch and 1 former member of staff. There have also been 3 external colleagues who have reached out regarding fitness to practice processes, and they've been signposted to appropriate advice and support to respond to their queries. Of the internal colleagues, the issues raised were around workload. They were around being listened to and respected by their managers, and just how they felt in terms of the atmosphere in the team. And the former colleague described a very similar, sort of very stressful experience in terms of pressure, in terms of workload, and how that impacted on their overall well-being. So that gives you a flavour of the issues that are raised, and I think they resonate in terms of the testimony that was given in Nazir's report. I think Eileen, you talked about outcome measures and the importance of us having outcome measures as opposed to just process issues, and I think we all recognise that when we get onto the performance report, you'll see that we have been thinking about what are the outcome metrics that we ought to be looking at, we'll obviously want to revisit these in light of the culture report, but the ones that we had in there are around engagement and therefore people's responses to the Your Voice survey, but also around freedom of opinion as well. So there's a bundle of metrics in that report, and I think, but we'll want to definitely iterate those with colleagues. And I completely agree with the point that Mags raised as well about the fact that this is about, we need to see the whole picture here in terms of understanding people's experiences and how best to improve them as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisanne. And the final point that I missed was Mags's point about reviewing the draft principles now that we have had more reaction, more feedback on the report. And yes, Mags, I think that is a very good idea. We'd look to do that. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Helen and Lisanne. The point I will hold on to there from council colleagues' questions is the high level of keenness on the part of council to do what they can to support this process and to keep their own finger on the pulse of what people are thinking and feeling about all of these issues. I know that council members are extremely keen to reach out as much as they can in a way that is helpful to the process of conversation and consultation, which I know you are carrying forward. Let's go back to the list of hands raised, and I'm going to go to Nadine and then Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Helen and colleagues, this was really helpful. I will start by saying sorry, because I am sorry for what our colleagues have been through and for what people are telling us and for how our registrants feel and what they've experienced from us as an organisation. And I know that everybody's hearing a lot of sorries. It's really important to say it because it's true, but I also recognise that it's actions, not words, that will really make a difference here. And I think that's really important to say. Just a couple of comments from me, really. And the first one, and I know this is something that is shared with our colleagues who are part of the People and Culture Advisory Group within the NMC, but I just want to say it here is this cannot be something that's seen as business as usual. This is not business as usual. The way that we act and respond and make change and transform the NMC, because that's what's absolutely essential here. It's not business as usual, and we really cannot treat it as such. And I'm not saying that we are, but I just think it's really important to make that point. This is something over and above. This is existential about the way that we are and who we are as an organisation and who the NMC is going to become. So I think it's really important to say that. And there's a point that Anna made, which I do just want to reiterate, which is about, and again, our colleagues from People and Culture Advisory Group have raised this. I know that some of them are on the meeting. What's the root cause, and how we really get to understand the root cause is absolutely vital. You know, responding to the independent review is something that we will do. We have, and I'm confident that we will do it. We have the recommendations, which, you know, as everybody said, we accept, and we will now start moving towards action on. But actually, that's not enough. And as Helen did say in the beginning, we can go further, and we must go further. In order for us to go further, we really need to understand and get right underneath how we've got to where we are. So those are the comments from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard some very important words here today from David, from Helen, from Sue, Nadine, all my other colleagues, and I add to that my sincerest apologies. I am sorry that people have experienced, whether it's registrants, members of the public, or our staff, that they have experienced what we have learnt about through the report. In thinking about how we are taking this forward, I absolutely echo what has been said. This is about actions, not just about words, that it is about understanding that those actions are the right actions. And that goes to the heart of what Nadine was just saying, that I think it's really important that we do understand we don't just have a suite of activities and actions as an action plan, apologies, but that we understand the impact that we want those activities to deliver, and that we are able to very carefully, very closely monitor that we are achieving those impacts from the actions that we set out. And if they're not delivering the impact that we anticipate, that we are agile and swift in changing those activities. I think it's really important that we keep that continuous feedback and improvement loop going, and that we are doing this alongside and with our colleagues, with our staff and other stakeholders, but that we keep that momentum going. What I'm hearing today and what I'm encouraged by is that we have absolutely no intention of not delivering on this, that we all agree that that would be unacceptable. However, I think it's really important that we still see that as a risk, that we articulate that as a risk in the organisation, and that we see that at the strategic risk register, and that as council, that gives us the opportunity to seek the assurance, understand the actions are taking us down a path that means we are delivering, we are bringing about change. So I think it's really important, again, that we have the means by which to kind of keep grip on this going forward in the longer term. The only other point very quickly that I want to make, as we said, it's about actions. One of the things I pick up from the paper coming to council today is that we want to make sure that we are prioritising our work, that we're getting that balance between the tension between that inclusive engagement and the pace at which we want to move forward. I welcome that. I would also, however, say that it's really important that through that prioritisation, through needing to put time and effort into this process, that we do seek to understand what the knock-on effects of that are, and that we don't cause additional issues to people and to our programme and to registrants through any knock-on delays or any other impacts that are indirect in one sense, but that we are keeping a very close eye on that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sue. Claire. Sorry, Lindsay, I apologise. Claire.
Thank you. Behind my saying sorry unreservedly, and I am, is also a real sense of shame as a registrant for the part that I may have unwittingly or wittingly played in terms of the pain and suffering that so many of our staff have endured, and endured for a long time. I ask myself, why did we need to turn to Nazir to probe into our organisation and talk to our staff to reveal the serious concerns which we'd collectively failed to find and dive into and explore as council members? And saying we didn't know these things were happening at the scale and seriousness they were is certainly true. But it is vital, as other colleagues have said, that we now have a further and more focused analysis of what was going on under the surface. And I welcome that. We need that total honesty with one another. And perhaps that's something that we haven't had sufficient attention paid to and been alive to. Because at the end of the day, a council is made up of people and relationships. And I think we need also to ask ourselves, I've certainly been asking myself, why was our challenge ineffective, as it evidently was? But we could address all of those 36 recommendations, and some of them are transactional. That's not to belittle them, but they are. And that's a necessary part of this process in terms of improvement and change. But is there a risk that we won't then get to the nub of the canker of toxic kindness in our culture, which means that we're not living up to our values? Our values are fairness, ambition, kindness, and collaboration. And Helen, I was pleased that already the work that on the competence and behaviour framework is being set up to move forward. But I do wonder, council colleagues, do we first need to spend some time revisiting our values with our people in an exercise that reminds us that those values are what guides everyone in our organisation? They're our moral compass, our North Star. And I think they're the key to creating a happier NMC. And it's not a happy place at the moment. And happy people don't make for the workforce that we want to have moving forward. So I do think looking at many of the elements of the recommendations and beyond that, the cultural challenges we face do mean that we need to reset and reconsider what's at the heart of our recommendations, our values. And I think that's a vital first step, perhaps before many of the other useful and valuable thoughts to making the changes we need to see.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm going to go back, if I may, to Helen and colleagues to respond on those 3 points. We've got 3 more hands raised, Flo, Rhiannon and Deborah. I'd like to come back to Helen at this point and then get a round of responses and then come back to Rhiannon and Flo and Rhiannon and Deborah to conclude the council's comments, because I'd like to move to answering the questions which have been tabled by our observers and others. Helen.
Thank you, Dave, and again, thank you, council members. So Nadine, Lindsay's and Claire's comments, we absolutely share your thoughts about not treating this as business as usual. We want this to deliver and make change at the NMC that we haven't previously achieved. You know, it has to be sustainable change this time. And that means it'll be taking a different approach. It means engaging with stakeholders as we test and implement the change, and probably engaging in a way that we haven't necessarily done before. Articulating the work and the challenge as a strategic risk, I think, is a fair comment again, and we need to record that accordingly. Lindsay, you talk about one thing that was in the report and the discussions with Nazir. One point he highlighted was the pressure across the whole organisation, not necessarily just within our fitness to practice teams, but across the whole organisation, because we do work as one big machine one way or another, actually creates to a degree that the behaviours and sort of various other challenges that we've got. So your point about, you know, trying to take some action somewhere else, having unintended consequences, is something that we're very, very aware of. And we, again, are already thinking about how we can improve the timeliness that it takes us to deal with the caseload, whilst at the same time reducing, not increasing, but reducing the pressure and improving the well-being of all those that are involved across the organisation, as well as those outside of the organisation. So that message was very loud and clear from the report and from, as I say, follow-on conversations with Nazir. Lisanne, talking about prioritisation, maybe you could just come in there about what we've done already and what we're looking to do going forward, please.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. We, some of you will remember, we ran a prioritisation exercise last October, and I think what we have been seeking to do since then is to keep quite an agile view on our resources, precisely to the point that I think Lindsay talked about if the intervention is driving the right outcome, great, but if it isn't, then we need to sort of switch track to ensure that we are putting our money in those interventions that will make the biggest impact on the outcomes that we are seeking. I think we have highlighted in one of the papers further on in the pack that there will be some difficult decisions. Prioritisation is difficult because it does entail choices and trade-offs about, and fundamentally we wouldn't have identified all the activities in our corporate plan if we didn't think all of them were important. So all of those activities continue to be important, but we do need to think about the sequencing of those activities to ensure that we keep people's workloads manageable. So over the summer, we'll be running a further prioritisation exercise once we've worked out what the resources and people requirements for the implementation of the recommendations in the report entail, and then we'll be coming back to colleagues, as we've already talked about, in September. So there'll be an opportunity to scrutinise those plans and get assurance that we think we've got the balance right between the pace and ambition that we all have to make progress on these issues, but also ensuring that we that the changes that we're introducing are sustainable and manageable for people on the ground in terms of their implementation.
Thank you, Lisanne. And Claire, on your final point on the culture change, we are just starting to plan our approach on the wider culture change, and we take your fair challenge on the values. They're good values, but there have been some challenge over some of those values going forward, so it's time to reflect on those as well. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Helen. Now I've got Flo. Claire, your hand is still up, but I assume that's legacy. Flo, Rhiannon, and Deborah, and then I'll come back to Helen again, and then we'll conclude the discussion and we'll move to questions. Flo.
Thank you, David. I'll try not to take too much time because I know the questions that come on later are really important. I wanted to reiterate my own apology, but also to give a personal commitment that as a registrant and an individual that's been involved with organisational change, that I'm personally committed to work with the exec and my colleagues and the organisation internally, externally, to help support in any way possible. I also want to thank Helen and Sam for asking me to help with some of the safeguarding agenda, which I'm really keen to help support and provide some critical challenge as well as high level support there. So thank you both for that. I'm keen to think about how we create a regular temperature check and frequent touch points as we rebuild trust internally and externally. And how do we do this in a way that also ensures that we don't paralyse our staff and our teams, but keep checking, because we're going to work really hard to get this right, but there are times that some of the actions may have unintended consequences. How do we keep checking? Is what we're doing having the impact that we hope it will have? And if not, how can we reassess, pause, reassess and think again? Thank you.
Thanks, Flo. Rhiannon?
Thanks, David, and thank you, Helen and David, and agree with all the comments that I've heard so far from council colleagues. I just want to make the point I'm sort of the latest arrival in terms of council member, only joining in June, and what I just wanted to say in terms of my experience of joining at such a difficult time for everybody, both within and outside of the organisation. But what I've been hearing and experiencing is a chair, a council, an executive that is really committed to wanting to do the right things, to put things right. And I want to be part of that change. Absolutely, I do. One of the things I just wanted to, I suppose, reaffirm or reiterate was around the approach. I think, Helen, you said about doing things differently, and I do think that's really, really important. And in terms of the design principles, in terms of the design approach to engaging with staff, I'm going to say collaborating with staff, because actually culture has got to be built from the bottom up. And although absolutely the council has a role, the executive team has a role, but if we really want to transform the culture, getting the design right to engage with everybody from within the organisation and those important external views, external stakeholders, I think taking some time to get the design right is really key. Just on a specific point, well, two actually, I totally agree with the strategic risk needs to be identified. I think it is something like failure to effectively respond to the findings of the report, something around that. But another specific, I just wanted to take some assurance today, if possible, Helen. Obviously, you know, one life lost is too many, and obviously we heard about those suicides in the report, and I just wanted to seek some assurance that the approach that we take as an NMC is very much built in how we work with employers in terms of identifying those people who may be more vulnerable to harm, and how support is wrapped around them to prevent anything like that happening again, because that number is shocking, I think, just to say it as it is, really. So anything that we can take assurance today that things are been put in place to respond more effectively in that wraparound. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Deborah, and then Navjot, and then I'll close the list. I think everybody will have asked a question or commented, and I'll come back to Helen. Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. So I would also like to add my apology for the experience that our staff and members of the public and registrants have faced, and also for the loss of trust. And although I joined in May, so just before Rhiannon, I am very conscious that the council as a group must shoulder its strategic responsibilities, as I've heard today. So I just want to ensure that, although I may be new, I am part of the group, and I also want to tender a heartfelt apology. One of the things that I've seen elsewhere in starting on a journey in the early stages is to seek to provide a one-size-fits-all rather than focusing on key issues. So I welcome the comments that I've heard from exec on doing the work to understand and address the root issues. But what I would like us to do and get not just reassurance, but evidenced assurance from exec as we go forward on how we will ensure that we stay the course and we are not diverted. So we actually hold the space so that the recommendations, the core of the recommendations, are what are addressed. And whilst I've heard Helen saying that we hope or plan to go further, I think ultimately, if we are going to address and transform the culture, that's going to have to be a condition. So it's recommendations plus. The other thing I want to just say in terms of what I know from across other sectors, that people often say culture is often seen as the way we do things around here. I've adopted this phrase that culture is the worst sort of behaviour that we choose to tolerate. And from the commitments that we've said here, there is going to be a clear action to ensure that we instill an environment of psychological safety, and not to be psychologically safe in terms of sort of health and well-being, but the 4 tenets of psychological safety, for which inclusion and EDI aspects is the first and a fundamental foundation, but it's not the only thing. It's also being able to be safe to learn, to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, and to be truly a learning organisation. Also to be safe to bring your authentic views. I think our staff on the front line have solutions, and so the commitment to engage with them at every step of the way to ensure that we get innovative solutions that allow and celebrate the authenticity that they bring to the piece is one area. And then finally, for staff to feel safe to challenge. And I think that it's great that we have a freedom to speak up guardian, but if we haven't got those 3 fundamental parts in place, then people will still feel reticent about challenging. So on that part, Chair, what I would like our staff or senior team to take away, I hear that we're likely going to see them in November, and I hear that they need to get trained first, but these are 12 people that we've heard about. And to be fair, I would celebrate an opportunity to meet them in the rough before the training, so that we can hear that we can hear from them what's inspired them to join, and so we can almost see a before and after, so sooner rather than later if we can. And then finally, just in terms of the corporate governance system, which is the system through which the organisation is managed and controlled, we've got a risk item on today's agenda, but what we haven't spoken about is that there are council committees, all of which address particular risks, and I just want to ensure that management is aware that from my position as the audit committee chair, that I'm seeking to upgrade the current corporate governance system that we have around risk and risk management. We've heard about the external support that we're getting from the DS and the Department of Health and Social Care. We've also heard about some of the internal work. I think it's key for us to just note for this meeting that the chairs of the committees have also had a meeting, and we have a commitment to, and I'm calling it upgrade, because we've had in effect an audit of our culture, an independent audit of our culture. So I'm keen for us to, for the gaps that we have identified, definitely for the audit committee, I'm looking to ensure that in short order we can work with management so that we can have an audit committee that accurately reflects not just the audit and risk aspects, but also some of the assurances around the areas, the systems and solutions that are being put in place. So I just wanted to ensure that we've minuted that the committee chairs have met, and we have made a commitment to upgrade the existing parts of the corporate governance system, specifically around some of the risks that we've identified that we need to get right in not just implementing these recommendations, but going further to provide a psychologically safe environment. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Deborah, for all those points. Navjot, and then I'm going back to Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Although as an associate to the Council, I would like to convey my sincere apologies to all the registrants, all the colleagues at NMC, and also a number of students, those who are into the organizations learning at present, and they must be feeling very apprehensive about situations. But I would like to reassure that we all are working on you must be hearing from the commitment from the Council today, how committed everybody feel around to bring this cultural transformation. Thank you, Helen, for sharing your plans. I've just got a couple of questions and a comment. We heard about safeguarding. We want to safeguard individuals, those who are vulnerable and at a risk. But I think we do need to take one step further. Although it's a challenging process for people to go through fitness to practice process, if we can make that experience qualitative for them, that they can be supported throughout the process, that the experience is not that detrimental, that they are feeling that ending a life is easier route. And second, my point is about the data. We have got data presented into around the length of the cases, that how long it takes for a fitness to practice cases. But my understanding is that there are some cases, and I may be wrong onto that there are some cases where we are waiting along for a third party resolutions, whether it is from a court or some other information. Is there a possibility that that data can be separated out to see that where are the cases where, despite all the efforts of fitness to practice team, we are unable to proceed them quicker? And while they are within that process, what support we can offer to those registrants? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Navjot. We may perhaps come to that point under item 9 on the agenda later as well. Helen, can I come back to you?
Yes, thank you, David. So first of all, if it's okay, let me bring in Sam Donoghue, who's an Assistant Director in Professional Practice, and we'll be able to speak about the actions that we're taking from a safeguarding perspective. Sam, please.
Yes, thank you, Helen and colleagues. I mean, there's a huge amount of work around the safeguarding agenda. Safeguarding came into the portfolio of Sam Foster and myself in January. We have a lot of work to do about how we develop the early identification and consistent identification of risk in regards to safeguarding, and supporting the well-being of registrants who are going through the processes. As an organisation, we brought in a specialist advisor to support this strategic safeguarding lead, and we've already established new governance arrangements around safeguarding. So the introduction of a safeguarding board that's already been referred to, clear reporting and governance processes through to the Charity Commission, where we feel that we've got areas to learn and areas to share. We need more resource within safeguarding. We're developing the as you will see, will come to council, the a safeguarding hub, so that will support this early identification using a multidisciplinary lens on cases, looking at how we make safeguarding everybody's business, which is beyond within the NHS, something that's really well done. So in regards to education and training for all, and where we need enhanced education around safeguarding. As well as looking, and there's a specialist work stream within the fitness to practice improvement work about how we support the well-being of people who go through our processes, and actually separating out safeguarding and well-being is really important, because the two, whilst they sit together, they do have we have separate functions across the two of them. So there's a lot of work around safeguarding. There's also a lot to do, but none of us want to be here this time next year reporting deaths by suicide of people in our processes. So I can assure you will see a lot of activity in regards to the safeguarding work stream. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Sam, much appreciated. Leslie, before we come back to me, do you just want to cover off the point made by Navjot on the data and really the stratification of our case holding?
Yeah, thank you, Navjot. So we can identify cases that are on third-party investigations, so with an external body such as the police, and we know that some of the delays in criminal cases coming to court prevent us from progressing cases at any rate. So that leaves registrants in a really difficult situation. We have got a dedicated lead in this area, and we're just in the process of appointing a further 2 individuals to provide support to registrants whilst going through the process, particularly targeting where the casework, for whatever reason, where sometimes it's outside of our control, is taking longer than it should. And that fits into one of the work streams on the fitness to practice plan. So it's work stream 1 that Sam Foster is leading. So more on that when we've worked that through, but thank you, Navjot.
Thanks, Leslie. Deborah's point, the council members meeting the empowered to speak up ambassadors sooner. We're in July. I'm not sure why that needs to wait until November. The team, their volunteers, we had quite a lot of people that actually applied for those roles. I would say they're highly motivated at the moment, and I think they'd appreciate time with yourselves, whether it's before they are trained or in the role or after. I just think they'd appreciate the support and the engagement with yourselves as well as others. So we'll take that as an action for us, if that is okay. Flo, it's difficult balance, providing the balance for oversight versus delivery. The teams need to be allowed to crack on to process the work, but at the same time, we all know the severity and the importance of ensuring that the steps that we're going to take are going to be the right steps and are going to deliver sustainable outcomes. You've heard myself say, and David also say, about the additional oversight that we support, we welcome with regard to the work that we're doing here. So please again bear with us, and we'll make sure that is worked in to the plans going forward that will be available in early September. Again, Deborah, I did say the 36 recommendations, we look to go beyond those. Those recommendations they don't cover everything. They don't, as you wouldn't expect of a report of this kind, they don't always go back to the crux of what the drivers are for the outputs that Nazir Rise Associates heard from colleagues and from others. So I think there is absolute acceptance that there is more work to do, and we need to go beyond those recommendations. Again, we just need to make sure we take the right feedback, we have the right people in the room to understand what that looks like. And it will be not only external parties, but most definitely our internal colleagues who will hold us to account as we go through this change. Council obviously will continue to hold us to account, and we've got this external oversight which will be increased from the PSA. They've always had a degree of oversight over us. So David, I think that's probably answered most of the questions. Apologies if I've missed any of the detail.
Helen, I don't think you have. I think that does answer the key questions which Council have asked. I'd like to move, because it's 12 o'clock now, I'd like to move to our question and answer session. We've allocated half an hour for this, but I think we're going to take a little longer. We can't, however, take kind of an indefinite period of time because there are a lot of questions, but there's also quite a big agenda we've got to get through after this important discussion. So I'm afraid I may not be able to answer all the questions which have been tabled in the Q&A chat, but we will try and get through as many as we can. We are committed to answering the questions which have been tabled in advance. And Matt, I think the format is that you are going to read the questions and then individual members of the executive or the council, in my case, will answer them.
Yes, David. So we've received questions in advance, which are visible in the chat. So I will read through the questions. We'll get the answers from either yourself or executive colleagues, and then we'll move on to the questions in the Q&A. And obviously we have the second question slot as well. So I'll crack on if that's okay, Chair. So the first question is, can the Chair confirm that the NMC leadership will engage directly with local Unison branch as the recognised union at the NMC to overhaul the culture and root out the many problems identified in the report?
Yes, thank you, Matt. That's for me. We're really proud to have recognised Unison and we will continue to work with local representatives to improve our organisational culture.
Thank you, Lizanne. The next question is, how is the NMC going to ensure justice and accountability for the many victims of bullying and discrimination who spoke to the independent review?
Thanks, Matt. So, as we said before, racism and any forms of discrimination and bullying should never today, excuse me, have any place in the NMC, and in the past should never have had any place in the NMC. Where it's been raised in the past, the organisation evidently has not taken enough action to address it or to hold people to account. That's what the testimonies from colleagues has shown. The report's recommendations will help address this and move towards achieving racial equity. We've talked about psychologically safety zones. We encourage all of our teams, and we have done certainly since the report's come out, let alone before that. We encourage our colleagues who've experienced any bullying, harassment, discrimination, any behaviour that is just not acceptable, not appropriate, to speak with their manager, to speak with their director, to speak with their peers, to speak with our networks, our employee forums, whoever they feel comfortable speaking to. But because of where we are, we hope that the introduction of the new independence, freedom to speak up Guardian, or anybody else that they trust, we hope that those channels will make sure that there absolutely is that psychological safety for colleagues who have experienced unacceptable behaviour, now to make sure that they do raise it, and we have a responsibility and will deliver that responsibility as an organisation to deal with it appropriately. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Helen. And another question for you, please. Why did the NMC fail to implement the recommendations from previous reviews?
Okay, so yeah, there have been quite a few previous reviews. There have been quite a few actions coming out of those previous reviews, and NMC has taken action following some of those reviews. For example, just two examples, we've set up the Employer Link Service and the Public Support Service. But again, I think it's fair to say that other interventions have not always been successful in achieving the desired change, the desired outcome, either immediately or in a sustainable way. And that is something that we have to change. We've talked about how things need to be different this time, how there will be different oversight. I think it's also important to say that our leaders, our managers, so not only at the exec level, not only at the council level, but the wider leadership and management team are central to driving forward change within this organisation. So we all need to buy into this approach. We all need to ensure the visibility. We all need to be accountable, whether we've got oversight bodies or not. We all need to now own this and make sure that we do drive the change forward from the wider cultural perspective, as well as where it needs to be within processes or other areas of investment within the organisation. That needs to start immediately. And yeah, we look forward to reporting progress on that as time passes. Matt, thank you.
The next question is, why should the NMC believe that change will be different this time?
I think that's for me, and I will say this. We have never had such a broad and deep assessment of the cultural issues within this organisation. And the testimonies in that report give graphic detail, which is wholly unacceptable. So a failure to change is not an option for us. We've fully accepted the 36 recommendations of the RISE Associates team, and we are, as you have heard in this meeting, we will be implementing them at pace in order to deal with the issues identified in the review. And we accept that this is a turning point for the NMC, and we're committed to acting on all these recommendations. I have to say, viewing this as chair, I have seen zero defensiveness on the part of anybody in council, in the executive, in the wider leadership team, in terms of responding to this terrible report and indicating a commitment to address the issues which it raises. And that lack of defensiveness, I think, is tremendously important. But I accept entirely that we have to earn the trust of those who are concerned by what the report has revealed, if we are to give the assurance that we can be different in the future. We earn that trust by implementing the recommendations and by all the things that the executive and council have talked about this morning.
Thank you, David. And the next question is, how will the NMC act to make their apology in response to the independent culture review a meaningful and genuine apology? And how will it make amends to those individuals who have been wronged?
Well, thank you for the question. It is a genuine apology. It's a genuine apology from everybody who's spoken this morning. And we have to ensure that we put in place actions to enact meaningful change if the apology is to be meaningful. And we will do that in partnership with and following feedback from all our NMC colleagues and our stakeholders, the professionals on our register and the public. We take those concerns with maximum seriousness, and we will put policies and processes in place to facilitate and support anybody who wants to raise specific concerns during that process.
Thank you, David. The next question is, would the council state explicitly what they, individually or collectively, acknowledge they have done or not done, which they are apologising for, rather than simply apologising for things that have happened without taking accountability for the part they have played, which directly or indirectly contributed to the outcomes described in the report?
Well, I indicated at the beginning of my remarks that I was apologising on behalf of the whole of council and the leadership of the organisation for and saying sorry to anybody who has experienced racism, sexism, any other form of discrimination, bullying or harassment at the NMC, and to members of the public, to registrants and colleagues involved in fitness to practice cases which are too protracted. We've taken some action on those issues raised. I won't repeat everything that's already been said in terms of the fitness to practice plan and the people plan, but we accept, and I accepted this publicly when I spoke to media outlets on the 9th of July, that this has taken too long. We commissioned this independent report because we wanted to understand the issues. We've accepted the recommendations. The council will be holding the executive to account for progress on implementation, but I absolutely accept that council is accountable too. And the purpose of today's discussion, which is the first, I think, of many open and transparent discussions about the review, its implications, and how we can put the issue right, is to acknowledge that accountability as publicly and as comprehensively as we can in order to earn people's trust that we can put things right.
Thank you, David. The next question, has the NMC offered individual direct apologies to the public and registrants involved in fitness to practice cases that are taking too long to be resolved, and to staff who are known to have reported experiences of racism, discrimination and bullying?
Thank you, Matthew. And I think this is my opportunity to offer my absolute sincere apologies to everybody that's experiencing delays going through the fitness to practice process. I think, as you know, our team have made enormous endeavours in terms of dealing with the caseload, and some of that has come at a price for them in terms of, you know, the stress and anxiety that they've experienced. We've offered a central apology, I think, from the exec team, and on a case-by-case basis when we're updating registrants involved in the process. We are making apologies for delays. Staff who are known to have reported experiences of racism, discrimination and bullying, we've made a whole range of channels available, and we've talked about a number of those today. And I think it's really positive to say that we are seeing already, outside of the kind of guardian role, that staff are coming forward and starting to talk to us about their experiences and things that have happened to them. So we are hearing some of those voices. Clearly not enough at this time, and there's lots more work to do there, but I am seeing some positive signs. I mean, in the first week alone, a number of people have approached me and talked about what their experiences have been and how it's impacted on them, and ways in which we could have done better and we could have done differently. And I think that's really positive. Long way to go. We do have a dedicated customer inquiries and complaints team who will investigate any complaints about our service and commit to implementing any learning that we have as a result of delays.
Thank you, Leslie. The next question: will the NMC proactively consider compensation for people who have been harmed both emotionally and financially by their acts or omissions in order to make their apology meaningful and genuine?
Thanks, Matt. And can I just reiterate, I've just seen one of the other questions in the chat box that I'm not sighing. I'm absolutely full of cold, so I am just struggling to breathe a little bit. So I'm not sighing at any specific responses that I'm given. So on this question, yes, of course, we will respond to concerns raised with us, and we will engage in the processes required to address those concerns. Where any individual wishes to bring a claim, we'll respond, we'll work with them directly. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. The statements published by the executive in response to the culture review do not mirror the framework expected from a nurse or midwife if a serious concern was raised about their practice. Why is that?
So while our code is clear on the importance of reflection and learning to improving practice, we don't prescribe a fixed framework for this. The executive board has aimed to respond to the report in a transparent way, looking to address all the key themes and making a clear commitment, as I've said this morning, and we will continue to say, to make that commitment and to be held accountable to make positive change at the NMC.
And then there's a question about why was this meeting changed from in-person to online?
Would you like me to answer that, Matt?
Please, Chair.
The council did approve amendments to our cycle of meetings back in March, I think, and agreed that we would be holding 2 meetings online in the 24-25 financial year in order to increase accessibility. And we decided to do that at the late July meeting and the January 25 meeting. We'd already taken that decision, and we didn't think it was appropriate to change it at very short notice. And indeed, had we done so, of course, we would be having an open council in person and people could have come, but it would have been far fewer than the, looking at my screen at the moment, 199 people we have online listening to us. And frankly, given the gravity of the report and the importance of the issues, we wanted to have as many people as possible listening to the transactions of the council. So that's why we had already changed the meeting to an online meeting, and we maintained it.
Thank you, David. The next question: what specific measures is the NMC implementing to protect representatives and whistleblowers who call out racism, ensuring they can advocate for justice without fear of retribution?
Thanks, Matt. So we've commissioned Ijoma Omambala KC to investigate our handling of the whistleblowing concerns that were raised internally, and also to identify areas for learning and improvement, as well as committing to publishing those recommendations. We're committed to acting upon them, and we will be refreshing our whistleblowing policy in light of those recommendations, as well as the ones that we've received from the independent culture report. And we'd very much like to engage with stakeholders on this policy to ensure that it does reflect best practice. We really do encourage anyone who has concerns about discriminatory behaviours in our processes to raise them with us. They will be taken seriously and they will be investigated, as indeed these concerns have been.
Thank you. The next question: how will the NMC evaluate the impact and harm caused by past investigations and fitness to practice cases on registrants? And that's broken down into A, will registrants be involved in any evaluation? And B, how does or will the NMC show they are actively and meaningfully safeguarding registrants throughout the process to mitigate future harm?
Thank you, Matthew. We do absolutely understand that the fitness to practice process can feel really overwhelming and can lead to anxiety. We're working, as you know, to improve the timeliness of our decision making through our plan so that we can begin to mitigate some of the anxiety and the pressures felt by people when they're going through the process. We do want to be a learning organisation. The work stream that I talked about earlier, within that one, will be undertaking work led by our senior registrant to understand this in a more holistic way, looking at how our fitness to practice processes can impact on professionals, including on career development and mental well-being. You'll have seen, some of you may have seen that Nancy Fontaine is involved in this work, and she'll be interviewing some professionals and hearing directly from people affected as part of that work. Since January, we've expanded our resources for the safeguarding and increasing our knowledge and training, alongside strengthening our operation procedures to better support staff and professionals. We've talked about our new safeguarding committee to strengthen our approach to managing and coordinating safeguarding. High priority internal safeguarding guidance has just recently been produced for our colleagues. We will be establishing or looking at options for how we support colleagues in fitness to practice with advice, enabling a multi-professional approach, which is very much the direction of travel.
Thank you. I've just seen in the chat that I have missed a question. So, oh no, it's just coming further down. So thank you to the person who's just raised that. I've just checked and it will be answered shortly. The next question is, how will the NMC evaluate the impact and harm caused by past investigations and fitness to practice cases on registrants? Will registrants be involved in, no, apologies, I've just read that question. So the next question, will the NMC routinely evaluate FTP process by offering a forensic review of cases from start to finish? A, can registrants request they are involved in this process? B, do they or can they show the capacity to critically evaluate their own practice in a transparent way? C, can they openly reveal to the public and registrants when they have erred in law, policy, guidelines or behaviour? D, will this be published?
Thank you, Matthew. One of the key parts of our plan is an end-to-end QA process. That piece of work is owned by my colleague Matthew McClelland, that isn't here today, but we will be updating a little bit on that work stream in a later session today. We do need an end-to-end quality assurance process so we can review the effectiveness and make improvements of what we do. The other area where we're focusing on this is the work that Ijoma Mabal is doing to look at the effectiveness of our decision making across a specific set of cases, and we'll build any learning from that into the quality assurance framework going forwards.
Thank you. The next question is, have the NMC made direct contact with or offered to meet the families and loved ones of the registrants who died by suicide during or after fitness to practice investigation? To offer their condolences in person and to review their circumstances to ensure that their dependents are not suffering hardship for which they should be offered support and compensation.
Matt, I think that one was originally for Sam, who's not with us at the moment. So let me respond to that one. We offer our sincerest sympathies and condolences to the family and friends of anyone who has died by suicide while under or having concluded a fitness to practice investigation. We'll also engage with any coroner's inquests that take place to support their inquiries, and we will always seek to identify any learnings for us as an organisation from the coroner's findings as how we can continue to improve our processes to minimise the impact on people. We'll respond to any concerns or issues raised with us by individuals or organisations, and we'll take those concerns very seriously. We'll also engage with appropriate individuals and organisations who wish to raise specific concerns or issues, including where somebody wishes to bring a claim for compensation.
Thank you. The next question is, given the significant deterioration in culture and increase in the fitness practice caseload, can you confirm that those responsible for these areas will be placed on performance management with clear targets, same level of scrutiny and adherence to policies if there is a failure to achieve demonstrable results? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So this again is one for me. So this is the first year that the executive directors have had shared objectives covering improving staff growth and development, increasing freedom of opinion and improving workload. Our annual people survey is used to benchmark progress. In addition, this year we've all got objectives to support reducing the caseload within FTP, and like all of our colleagues, we'll be treated consistently and fairly and will be held to account if we don't achieve our objectives in the same way as part of our ambitious appraisals process that any other member of staff would be dealt with. Thank you.
The next question. Members of the public, professionals in the NMC's register and NMC staff will all be concerned about recruitment practices at senior leadership level. And then the question is broken down into A, what measures have the NMC put into place to recruit leaders who have a positive track record, can demonstrate and accept diverse views and are willing and able to challenge the executive team? And B, what measures have been put in place to ensure that these leaders are protected from being ostracised or facing reprisal once in post?
Thank you, Matt. So for the first aspect, the NMC works with professional recruitment firms for its senior appointments. And as you'd expect, senior leaders are expected to demonstrate both cultural competence and high standards of inclusion at interview. In terms of demonstrating a willingness to accept a challenge, obviously the board commissioned the independent reviews that has been completed by Nazir Afzal and Rise Associates, as well as by Joma Omambala KC in response to concerns raised, and those recommendations have been accepted in full. So measures are in place to ensure that people can raise concerns, and it's right that that's the case, but obviously we'll be seeking to learn in light of the conclusions of Ijoma Omambala's investigations in terms of our handling of those concerns when we receive that report later this year.
Thanks. The next question, the Nazir Afzal report shows that areas that we have raised concerns about, including preventable deaths and serious injuries to the public and registrants. This needs an independent public inquiry into the entire dysfunction of the NMC. Will the current NMC chair and board agree and self-refer this for public inquiry?
Sorry, I'm on mute. I think that is for me. Can I start by saying I associate myself with Helen's words a few questions ago of condolence to the families of those who have died by suicide during our fitness to practice processes. There has been a comprehensive independent review of our people and culture by Nazir Afzal and Rise Associates. And as we've said, we accept the recommendations of that review, and we are going to implement them. And I'd also make the point that Nazir has himself said in his commentary on the review that he has confidence in the council, in their ability to lead that process, and that the NMC is capable of reforming itself along the lines that he has recommended. As I've also said, we need to continue to earn that trust and demonstrate that we can, and I believe we will. I mentioned in my preliminary remarks that I met the Minister and we have agreed a suite of actions which will support that process, and the aim will be to give the assurances to the wider stakeholder community that we can address the issues which Nazir's report has identified.
Thank you, David. Will the NMC agree to review cases where there is evidence of miscarriage of justice, bias, deception by the case managers and NMC legal teams to the panels, resulting in unsafe and wrongful decisions against registries?
Thank you. There are avenues for review appeals at each stage of our fitness to practice processes. The criteria and time limits applied to those are set out on our website for people to follow. We've also obviously commissioned Ijoma Amabala to conduct a review of our decision making across a specific number of cases. That will form the basis for further learning and processes for the NMC.
The next question, can the chair of the NMC confirm whether he had directly received any whistleblowing concerns from staff, was copied into any before the RISE review, and did Ijoma review was commissioned and published?
Thank you for the question. I can't obviously discuss individual cases, but I can confirm that I was copied into whistleblowing concerns before the reviews were commissioned.
Yeah. And the next question, as a whistleblower has raised concerns that the NMC is withholding evidence needed by the Ijoma Amabala review, can the NMC confirm it has so far provided all of the evidence requested and needed for this review to go ahead, and will, going forward, comply with its expected duty of candour in relation to disclosing information to the Amabala inquiry, investigation, and any future inquiries?
Thanks, Matt. So it's exactly for those inquiries that this one's down to me. So as it's just been said, we've published the terms of reference for Ijoma Ambala's investigations on our website. And to date, we believe we've provided everything that Ijoma's requested, and we will continue to do so. Anything that she asks for, she will be provided with. Absolutely nothing will be withheld from her. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. The next question was for Sam, Foster, who's not here, so I will answer it because it's a data related point. Does the NMC have figures for how many nurses have taken their own lives while experiencing ongoing NMC FTP investigations and processes for each year since 2015? If so, please confirm. So we have data going back to 2018 to 2019, and it's included in our fitness to practice annual reports. And these are published annually and laid before Parliament. And I can confirm that in 2018-19, 4 registrants died by suicide whilst in the FTP investigation. In 2019 to 2020, there was 1 registrant that died by suicide whilst under investigation, but there were none in 2020 and to 2021. In 2021 to 2022, 3 registrants died by suicide while under investigation. 2022 to 2023, 3 registrants died by suicide while under investigation. And in 2023 to 2024, 5 registrants died while under investigation in FTP. Okay. The next question. What will be shared with stakeholders in terms of action improvement plans, and how can stakeholders hold the NMC to account? And the sub-question to that is, how can stakeholders be kept up to date on progress?
Sorry, Matt, thank you. So as soon as the report was published, myself and David, as Chair of Council and Acting Chief Executive, met with many external stakeholders as well as with colleagues internally to update them on the findings of the report. That included the Chief Nursing Officers and the Chief Midwifery Officers. And I've already had follow-up conversations with some of those people to start discussing about the plans to look at correcting some of the issues raised in the report. During the reflection period over the months of July and August, we'll continue with that engagement and look to receive feedback from colleagues as well as other parties who we appreciate that have already got in touch with us. We might not have got in touch with all of you straight away, but over the next 2 to 3 months, we'll accelerate that engagement so that we can take the feedback and feed it into our plans. Thanks, Matt.
The next question, where can public registrants go to ask questions or to raise concerns directly about the report?
Well, we have a customer complaints and inquiries team hotline and an online form which can be used for people who want to ask questions or express concerns about the content of the report. The team can be contacted by telephone. The number is 020 7681 5830. And the team is committed to acknowledging concerns and responding to them within 20 working days.
The next question is, will the NMC be financially supporting people who wish to take their case through the appeals process?
So again, Matt, I think this one's for me. So we have a legal duty to look at all fitness to practice concerns that are raised with us, including where people are appealing decisions. However, it would not be feasible for the NMC to provide financial support to individuals who have been referred to us. Where somebody wishes to bring a claim, we will engage with them properly in that process going forward.
The next question, what additional support is being put in place for people in our processes whose anxiety will have increased following the report's publication?
We have a free, independent, confidential care line who are available to support professionals on our register who are involved in our fitness to practice processes. Services available 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. We have really good feedback about that service. The care line counsellors are experienced in working with sensitive and personal information. They can also obviously reach out to a case officer if their case is allocated with somebody, and anyone that's very concerned, they could reach out to our complaints and inquiries team.
Thank you, Leslie. How can people have confidence in decisions that have been made in our FTP processes? Do we anticipate an increase in appeals of decisions? How will appeals be resourced so processes aren't delayed even further?
So we do make thousands of regulatory decisions each year in line with the guidance that is published on our website. We do have internal quality assurance mechanisms, and the PSA, our oversight body, reviews all final decisions made by our independent panels at our fitness to practice hearings. In 2022, we commissioned an independent review of a number of screening closure decisions, and overall this found that the decisions were appropriate and proportionate, and there were no concerns that the NMC was failing its duties to protect patient safety and uphold the wider patient public interest. That said, the whistleblowing concerns do include concerns about our regulatory decision making, and that's why we've commissioned Ijoma Omabala KC to review the cases that will be raised. Once we've got Ijoma's outputs and findings, obviously we will review that further.
Thank you, Leslie. Just to note that we expect that Ijoma's report later this year in November, which answers one of the other questions we've received. The next question is...
Can I just add to that? Sorry. In terms of appeals, if there was to be an uplift in appeals, we have already started making some provision in case that should happen, and we are freeing up some of our assistant registrar capacity that kind of oversee the work in that area.
Thanks, Leslie. Sorry for interrupting. The next and final question from those in advance is, what learnings are the NMC undertaking from the NHS and other organisations who have been through similar challenges, including having to manage quality reviews and updates on performance? How can other regulatory bodies provide scrutiny?
Thanks, Matt. So I'm just going to start to answer this question, and I'm going to hand over to Sam Donoghue, who can talk about the outreach team that we have. So I think I said in my previous response, we welcome feedback from stakeholders. The engagement that we've had so far has started to initiate some of the learnings and good feedback that we will consider and hopefully be able to build into our plans so that we deliver a programme of sustainable change. And I'll say again, I'm grateful to the stakeholders who have offered support and guidance and scrutiny for the work that we're doing. Again, myself and David have commented about the additional oversight that we will use to complement our existing governance structure and that includes working more with the Professional Standards Authority, the Charity Commission, and the Equality and Human Rights Commission. Sam, do you just want to touch on the outreach team and the intelligence, the rich intelligence that they pick up in the work that they do, please?
Yes, thanks, Helen. And we've got an annual report coming later to the meeting today, which explores a bit further. So the employer liaison team, the link service, we're out with our regulation advisors working with employers, and so we're listening to employers really actively all the time. This is our business as usual, but in particular at the moment, to support them and bring intelligence into the organisation, as well as to listen to them. And that includes the other professional and system regulators as well. So we're closely working with them to just build trust and confidence in the response that we've got as an organisation, and to keep our response incredibly people-centred, so the professionals that we support have confidence in us too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam and Helen. So we're now going to move on to the questions from the Q&A box function. I'll start with those that were asked first. And I will look to Helen to allocate questions to colleagues in the executive, please. So will the additional costs and workload associated with implementing the People and Culture Review recommendations impact the NMC's ability to tackle the FTP backlog in the coming months?
So I'll start with that one. We've talked a little bit about prioritisation. Lisanne mentioned that we will need to revisit again our complete portfolio of work. However, as an organisation, we will not move away from our core regulatory function, which is to regulate. And as we've said prior to the report coming out, that the number one priority for the organisation has been reducing the timeliness with which we deal with our fitness to practice caseload. That remains our top priority. As you have seen from the culture report, there is Nazir and Rise Associates made the link between that caseload, the pressure on colleagues as well as others related to that caseload. So it remains an area of focus for us. We have already done some taken an initial review of our financial position to ensure that we can continue with the investment in fitness to practice, in the fitness to practice plan, as well as investment where we need it to address the concerns raised in the independent People and Culture Review. So in short, no, we will continue to invest in the fitness to practice plan whilst we either release or use funds that we have, redirect those to make the progress with the plans, the actions that we need to take to improve the culture at the NMC. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Helen. This is a question directly for the chair. How does the chair respond to calls for him to step down, as seen on social media and referenced in today's council papers?
Thank you for that question. I am not going to stand down as chair of the NMC. I think, firstly, it is important that there should be stability and continuity in the leadership of the organisation as we tackle the very difficult issues which have been identified by Nazir Afzal's report. And I think that continuity is best served by me as chair and the council remaining in place to oversee the processes which we are setting in train. I've talked about accountability in this, and that accountability for me is key to understanding what went wrong and how we can ensure that this never happens again. That is a process of self-reflection, which I've urged all my council colleagues to engage in. I don't have to urge them because I know that it is central to their commitment to the organisation. And it is a process of self-reflection which we will do in public, because it is important that we not only understand how we could have avoided this, but that we share that understanding more widely. But I believe not only in transparency, but in supporting the organisation to the best of my ability as chair to put things right. I gave that commitment when I spoke to the media. I've given the commitment to other stakeholders. I'm committed to remaining as chair in order to oversee the process whereby we address the serious issues which Nazir has identified.
Thank you, Chair. The next question is very similar repeat of the question we've just asked, so I shall move on. What confidence can NMC staff have in the Chair, Council and Executive Board to address the serious issues raised in the Culture Review when those same leaders have consistently failed to address these same issues in the past? Further, with the appointment of the Interim Chief Executive, Don Broderick, after the report had been received by Council, and River Effer Associates, eroding any lingering hope for lessons to have been learned. As Chair of Council, should David Warren not immediately step down to demonstrate real accountability and make way for new leadership? So we've addressed the latter part. Focus on the first half of the question.
Well, I recognise that it is necessary to earn people's trust, and one earns trust by actions matching words. We've used a lot of words today, and they are sincere words, but they will be trusted by people who are sceptical if we demonstrate that we are both understanding the issues, and that is a process of consultation, understanding, reaching out, listening, and everything that we've spoken about, and addressing the issues, which is a process of implementing the recommendations and doing so as fast as we can. I know that there are other issues which are referred to in the question, recent issues within the NMC that have called people's trust into question. I can only give, as I gave at the last council meeting, complete assurance that all due diligence processes were carried out that helped to support the proposed appointment of an interim CEO, and I very much regret that it was not possible for the individual concerned to confirm that appointment and take up the post.
Thank you, David. The next question was asked as an advanced question, so I shall move on. The next question: there is deep concern throughout the nursing and midwifery professions about addressing the FTP backlog and the impact on those awaiting their case to be addressed. What is the risk assessment process for those FTP cases and our nursing and midwifery colleagues which remain unallocated and awaiting allocation?
Thanks, Matt. I'm hoping Leslie can come in here, please.
Yeah, that's fine, Helen. I can understand the deep concern about addressing the backlog. The programme of change that we got through the FTP plan is specifically targeting unallocated cases at each of the stages. All new referrals into the organisation are reviewed by the screening team, and assessments are made of risk by screening decision makers, and on that basis of the information we initially receive or subsequently gather, we'll make a public interest or the registrant's own interest decision about whether a restriction on the professional's registration is required. On the unallocated pots, risk assessments are made regularly across all the unallocated caseloads. Unallocated cases are generally those determined to be of very lower risk cases, but risk is reviewed and considered on an ongoing basis by those dedicated teams when cases are being allocated. I will be updating later on today, but one of the kind of benefits that we've seen already from the investment in screening is that we've been able to make significant inroads into the unallocated pot at screening, and our focus needs to be further down the chain into investigation and on legal reviews. But I'll be able to talk some more about that later.
Thank you, Leslie. I think we've addressed some of this question before, but there is a specific point, so I will read it. What steps are being taken to fully support and listen to whistleblowers attempting to raise legitimate concerns? The airline industry valorises people who speak up, which points to a healthy organisation.
Thanks, Matt.
Sorry, Matt, was someone talking then?
I was going to come in, Helen, if that's
Thanks,
helpful.
Suzanne.
So we support, listen and investigate whistleblowing concerns when they're raised. Clearly, as I've mentioned already, we have appointed a Omar Bala KC to investigate our handling of the whistleblowing concerns that prompted the People and Culture investigation. And as I've already mentioned, we will be learning lessons from that, and we will be refreshing our whistleblowing policy in light of that.
Thank you. The next question is about, will the senior independent advisors have experience in tackling institutional racism?
And Lisanne, if you want to take that one, or even David, I think you've been having the conversations there.
I think the answer is we assume so. We have yet to identify specific names for the senior independent advisory posts for council, but the aim, as I said, is to have people whose experience, expertise, practical experience and expertise indeed provides that level of assurance and challenge to us.
Thank you. I believe this question relates to the update on the appointment of the interim and permanent chief executives. How will you ensure that interview panel is fair and equitable? The style of questions, the style and the type of questions, and the question asker hopes it will be strengths-based. Otherwise, it will be unequally biased to Western European candidates.
Thank you, Lisanne. I think that's another one for you, please. Lisanne, are you there?
Apologies. We'll be working with expert recruiters who have the knowledge and expertise to advise us on this in relation to the chief executive role, and in seeking to procure some support with this, we have weighed EDI expertise as the single biggest thing that we are scoring. We've assessed them not only on how they approach it, but also their past performance in attracting diverse candidates, from attraction through to recruitment. And this is something different than we've done in the past. I also just thought it'd be helpful to add that since the start of this year, we've also been doing training for all colleagues on recruitment panels, including how to consider creating the right EDI outcomes. Doing that in light of the recommendations from the independent culture report.
Thanks, Lisanne. The next question. Rise Associates told me that unlike other regulators such as media, solicitors, and police, they were shocked at how little nursing representation the NMC Council has, which was explained to them as a reluctance to let the nurses mark their own homework. Will there be an effort to have more nursing voices and expertise at the NMC going forward? I'm happy to take the first point as a point of legislation and then share more widely, Helen, if that's helpful.
Perfect, thanks, Matt.
So the NMC Council, its makeup is set out in legislation. The Constitution Order sets out that we have a council which is made up of 6 registrant council members and 6 lay council members. So it would take a change to our secondary legislation, which established the NMC to affect that.
Thanks, Matt. And from an operational fitness to practice perspective, we need to ensure that we have the right blend of multidisciplinary teams looking at or referrals that come into us. What I mean by that is that you need the clinical expertise, the regulatory expertise, and the legal expertise. And even when you've got those 3 areas of expertise, they all need to have the same sort of volume of voice, the parity of being heard. The report highlights that we don't seem to have that right at the moment. We need to revisit that, and we need to make sure that we do have the right nursing voices, the clinicians there, so that we do have the appropriate balance of the multidisciplinary teams looking at the referrals and the FTP workload that comes into us.
Matt, before you ask the next question, can I just suggest that we have 5 minutes more of questions? We are allocated half an hour. We had a lot of questions to get through, very important ones. These are also very important, but I don't think we're going to be able to get through all the questions, and we must address the rest of the agenda. There will be, of course, a second Q&A session later in the afternoon. So if I suggest that we finish at 5 to 1, which is about 35 minutes later than planned, and see how many questions we can get through the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, of course. So the next question, what immediate actions have been taken to address the concerns from the culture review? The immediate actions described in the NMC's responses have either been work that has was done previously, such as the amended guidance and the empowered to speak up guardian, or things that are intended but have not happened yet, like the appointment of an ED advisor to EB. Has anything actually been done to protect staff, registrants and the public in the 2 weeks since the report was published?
Thanks, Matt. So let me take that one again. So the organisation received a draft report before the report was published, and we actually acted where we could do on the content of that draft report, working with Rise Associates and Nazir. And what I mean by that is where there were individuals, not named individuals, but where there were individuals that had obviously had very traumatic or distressing experiences, whether from within the organisation or outside. We followed up with Rise Associates and Nazir to make sure that they'd provided the support, or whether there was anything we should do, bearing in mind it was an independent review and people contributed anonymously, which was appropriate. Since the report, or in building up to the report coming out, we needed to make sure that our staff, both internally and again, that there was external support for people available as well. So we did take actions to enhance the support that we were giving to people. And yes, some things were already in play, like the Freedom to Speak Up ambassadors and the independent Freedom to Speak Up individual. It was essential that we had that structure in place when the report was published. Other things like the appointment of an EDI advisor, that is in progress, because we have to follow, be compliant with processes from a procurement perspective, from another perspective. So there was a lot of work done as soon as the report came out, but there's more work ongoing, as I say, in line with processes that we have to follow.
Thank you, Helen. The next question, I'm looking at the visuals of the presenters today. Ask yourselves who is not being represented.
So I can take that one, and I think we do that every time we see executive board on screen and council on screen, and that certainly feeds into some of the feedback and some of the recommendations that I've mentioned previously about the representation within the executive board and the opportunities that we have with the 2 vacancies. David, I'm not sure if there's anything you might want to add to that too.
No, I other than to echo what you say, Helen, I'm acutely conscious of the point that the questioner makes in terms of the diversity of the council as well as the diversity of the executive board. It is clear that that is at the heart of an effective response to the Rise Associates review. And this is not about optics. This is about the culture of the leadership of the organisation.
Thank you, David. The next question, I believe we have addressed in terms of how we will address the detriment, but I will read the question out for completeness. As a registrant who has whistleblown, poor performance of the NMC must not be underestimated. It has led to loss of lives and livelihoods. I have lost my career as a direct result of the incompetence of my regulator, and the public remain at risk. Will the NMC address the detriment that continues as a result of their incompetence on an individual case basis?
Matt, as you said, I think we've addressed that one previously, but just to summarise that any individual that approaches us with regards to a claim, we will review that in line with process. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks. And at that point, Chair, it's now 12:55, so I propose that we halt there in line with your direction.
I apologise to those observers whose questions haven't been answered, but we must maintain some time control of the agenda. Matt, I think the arrangement will be for us to reply to all the questions that have been tabled to the best of our ability, and I want to thank observers for engaging with so many questions and so many important, challenging questions to all of us as we take this work forward. That concludes this question and answer session. We will have a second one for the rest of the agenda later in the afternoon. And I want to thank the executive for their response, firstly for tabling the review paper and for their response to the discussions and comments from council colleagues earlier. I'm not going to try and sum this up, but those council members who made the point, and Nadine, I think you led with this, that this cannot be business as usual, go to the heart of what we are talking about here in terms of earning the trust of all the staff, the registrants and the public who are concerned about what the review has revealed. There is always a danger when we get into process, and we have to get into process as we implement 36 recommendations and do so as fast and safely as we can, that process looks like business as usual. But this is not business as usual. It is a turning point for the organisation. And I know, because council have had a number of private discussions as well as this public discussion, how committed every member of council is, and every member of the executive is, to ensuring that this turning point turns the organisation effectively. This will not be the last of these discussions in public at Open Council on these issues. This is the beginning of an urgent process, and I'm really grateful to everybody for having engaged in it so candidly this morning. Thank you to all. I'm going to break now for half an hour's lunch, which means we get back online at 1:25 if we can, to look at the performance and risk report. Thank you to everybody.